rule one of being a criminal lawyer is never ask the person आपने गलत किया या नहीं किया, because then I'm going to be clouded by bias.
Law isn't about verdicts and judgments. It's about human lives caught in moments of crisis.
Everything is unseen. All the facts are manipulated because the lawyers have to present them in such a way. Just for a regular case to begin, the cases that are not media sensitive, that are not expedited or fast tracked, so to say, it takes a minimum of 5 to 8 years for the case to just begin. The biggest problem with a social media trial is that conviction pehle hi ho jata hai. Public is already decided that he's guilty and he deserves to be hanged. Specifically, one incident when I was defending a murderer, it was a gang war. The day before the hearing, the rival gang, they sent me a picture on WhatsApp of the same gun that was used by my client to kill his family members.
Oh my God.
And the message said, this gun will be used.
Criminal law often deals with the darkest sides of human behavior.
Absolutely.
From your experience, what patterns you notice that makes people commit crimes in the first place?
See, I think primarily I can say a lot of people commit crimes because of.
So, Gayatri, tell us what exactly is criminal law. As much as people are educated and they know what's happening in the world, I don't think we understand the nitty-gritties of law. I don't think we truly know what it means to be a criminal lawyer versus a civil lawyer. I think we do know what a divorce lawyer entails because of the word itself, but I think otherwise the lines are blurry for a common man.
Correct.
So, can you tell us just what you cover?
So criminal law is the law that everybody thinks of when you say Qaida, when you say Gunha, when you say Jolly LLB. I think that's the law that the Aam Janta thinks of. Police wale hai, there are hatkadas, there is a katgara, there are witnesses, and there are murderers, and there are accused people. And that's exactly what criminal law is. It's a branch of law that covers crime, that punishes a criminal, that saves an innocent person, and that gives justice in true sense. At least it tries to the victim of whatever crime that they've suffered. So that is what criminal law is in India and everywhere. Yeah.
So, law isn't about verdicts and judgments. It's about human lives caught in moments of crisis. And today we're going to go beyond the black and white of justice to explore the gray spaces where law means mental health, and stigma means resilience, and justice means healing. Tell us how long courtroom battles have shaped your view on the human mind.
So to answer your question in one word, it is frustration. As a lawyer, when clients come to me, they're full of hope in their eyes. They come to me looking at me like a messiah who's going to get them justice that they believe is justice. And though I try to, motivate them or encourage them or reassure them is the correct word, but I end up just being frustrated and helpless because of the tariq pe tariq, the long dates, the inefficiency and inadequacy of our system, the judiciary, the police machinery, and I just feel helpless. The more the long run the battle in court is, I feel a sense of helplessness every day on a daily basis.
But you know what I was trying to ask was, you, I'm sure, have defended criminals. I'm sure you have been on the other side where you are siding with the victim. I'm saying because you experience so much of this in the criminal side of the world, how do you perceive the human mind? What do you think of human beings? How do we actually function?
I think the human mind is extremely complicated, and the more people I meet, because most of the people who I meet are in a bad space mentally or are aggrieved in that sense. So I think that there are so many complex emotions that everybody is dealing with, and I came to understand because of the area of practice that I do every day. Not only has it honed my own interpersonal skills with people, but I don't judge people anymore. I'm not the same person I was that when I started my career. And to tell you, give you an example, 10 years ago, when I started my career, I met a client who was a victim of violence, and she happened to have these dark circles under her eyes. And because, I also have that genetic issue, a lot of people have always asked me, "Arey, aap sote nahi ho, do you take so much stress?" And I happened to ask her the same question. And she looked at me and she said that, "Gayatri, I've been beaten and that's the reason I have these under eye circles. They are not the regular under eye, because of lack of sleep or dark circles as you call them. I've been repeatedly beaten under my eyes, and that's the reason I've got these sockets and bruises all over my face. And there are scars that have been left.
So that's a piece of scar.
And I'm wrecked. I'm just wrecked now. They may not be fresh scars, but I'm in a state of wreck." And she didn't go ahead with me because she said, "You don't have any empathy and you've not related to my problems and you've been extremely offensive." And that's when I had a hard stop and I reflected. And I said that, okay, people are really dealing with
A lot.
a lot. It's not just cosmetic. And I think that's where I decided that no, I have to be very mindful.
Yeah, because when somebody comes to a lawyer, maybe they've been through domestic violence, maybe they've been through different types of violences in their life or different problems that they come to you with. But in the end, it's the external is a very little representation of the internal, and sometimes none. Sometimes you look at a person, you can't even tell what they've been through. They may have been through a lot of abuse, and they just can't. So it's great to hear, someone as young as you has understood the difference between somebody coming with a problem, but all the backdrop that's happening, and then not be able to express it, and you to take that mental angle to it. That's absolutely amazing.
I think that was a learning lesson and a moral for me that I took forth thereafter, that I can't be insensitive to their problems, and I need to be very mindful about what I say because they're in a very, very sensitive position.
And I'm sure everyone who comes in this space, when, I think lawyer is like almost like a last resort, right? When we try to sort a problem, we're not able to sort it out, then you need an outside help. If it's a mental health problem, let's say we see a mental health specialist. But if it's a problem that's not able to sort out our life, let's say we see a lawyer that you need a lawyer for. It is a last resort. It is not the first thing. No one wakes up and says, today my husband was abusive towards me, or today my wife did this, I'm going to go see a lawyer. A
Absolutely.
lawyer is really like almost like a last resort.
In fact, it takes them a lot of courage to make
come.
the decision of seeing a lawyer.
Correct.
And I
exactly.
often have clients who come and say that, ma'am, we've been contemplating this for
For
the
years.
last 2 years, but I've never gotten to do it because log kya kahenge, and am I doing the right thing? Am I betraying my husband? Am I betraying the family that I've built over the years? So that itself is a big step for them to approach a lawyer. So I need to be more sensitive and mindful about it, is something I realized after this incident.
Imagine we never knew that even having a lawyer is a stigma, but it can be.
It
right?
is a stigma
Okay,
for
so
a
tell
lot
us,
of people.
criminal law often deals with the darkest sides of human behavior.
Absolutely.
From your experience, what patterns do you see or do you notice that makes people commit crimes in the first place?
See, I think primarily I can say money or monetary benefits is one of the main motives or reasons why people fall prey to committing crimes. A lot of people commit crimes because of poverty, because they see some illegal, illicit benefits. They don't know any better.
Yeah.
They are uneducated. A lot of drug smugglers or peddlers or small boys who make some additional money selling drugs or party drugs and things like that. Also, I feel vengeance, revenge, because that comes from your emotional side of the mind. And other than that, yes, a lot of people also have psychological problems or sexual issues that they don't have control over, which gets them to commit these sort of crimes.
So they really do have a
They
mental
really
health
do have
issue.
a problem.
Yeah.
So I would want to tell you one of the instances, because money being a motive and vengeance, and she did something to me, so now I want to get back at her. These are very common. We see this very often. But to dive a little deeper, there was one client who came to me, a very erudite, cultured person working in a bank, and he had he had a history of 3 molestation cases against girls, young girls, okay, underage girls.
Oh.
So he's requested for a confidential meeting with me, and he opened up and told me that, madam, I don't want to do this. I can't control. So I feel like stalking a person. If you've seen the episode You, if you've seen
I
the
have
TV show,
the show, yeah.
yeah, so found a lot of similarities. Until then, I thought this was only possible on a show or in a book. But he confided in me and confessed that I don't want to do it. I know what I'm doing is wrong. That's the reason I haven't gotten myself into a long-term relationship or settled down, because I wouldn't be faithful to that person, because my sexual drive doesn't stop me to the extent of wanting to fondle young girls. And I'm open to help, but my parents are in denial. So I'm dealing with a lot at home. He was undergoing therapy. He was on psychiatric medication.
Correct.
But no court of law is really going to understand that.
No.
But I had to open up my mind. I had to read up on these things. I even met a psychiatrist to seek his opinion, and I then understood that he actually doesn't have any intention to do it. Not that it's pardonable or not that it's correct. That doesn't make it right.
Correct.
You can't do that.
And that's a separate entity.
That's a separate issue. But the fact that he has no intention, and because of the physiology and the the hormones
Psychosis
or
also, right?
psychosis, he is unable to control his actions, and he really needs help. And in the US, such cases are treated very differently.
Correct.
So that mechanism is not available in India
Yet.
yet.
I'm sure it will be
I
as
hope so.
time, because that's exactly the point, right? Like, mental health is not really an established format that we study and we read and we talk about. And I think as it's becoming more and more prevalent, I'm sure the justice departments and stuff like that will start looking at it as it's probably just a mind problem. Like, if somebody's arm is missing and they have used the other arm for something else, and they'll understand that this part of the brain is not
Correct.
working and functioning normally, and they have used the other part incorrectly to commit
And
a
it's all
crime.
interrelated. If your mind is not at peace, then your body
Body,
doesn't
yeah,
react.
absolutely.
Correct.
It is the mind that controls the
Correct.
body. It's not really the other way around.
So I think after meeting this person, I mean, this also was a big learning lesson, that there was no intention to commit an offense. Which is
because you do watch it on shows and you think like this just happened
this or
somewhere.
this is somewhere in the
imaginary.
US, in some town, this is happening.
Yeah.
But this happened right here in Bombay, and he's working in a bank, having a good job. You would never imagine that this is the sort of demons that he's battling from within, where he's unable to control even fondling young women, young girls.
Oh my God.
And he has all regret. He's repenting, but he doesn't know how to stop himself. But at the same time, he cannot get himself admitted into a rehabilitation or a corrective center, because there are limited facilities. There's so much stigma. Parents are in denial, and he's a young guy. He's under 30.
I think the sad part is the stigma part. I think the sad part is denial, because families don't want to ever accept that something is wrong with their child or their grandchild. Nobody wants to accept in the society that it's okay, they might be going through something, and if they go to a correctional facility, things will be better. They're like, once he goes there, then his name is tainted or her name is tainted.
Who will get married to him?
Exactly. They're so worried about the tainting part that they don't understand that that person is going to suffer for the rest of their life. So, and I think that happens with a lot of mental health issues where people don't address it, or people are scared to take their family members to correctional institution because then they're so scared of the name attached to it. Like, he went to a rehab, or she went to a psychiatrist. She went to a psychiatrist. Is she mental? They have that kind of
Pagalon ka doctor hai.
Yeah,
We
they
hear
still
it
have-
so often.
Yeah.
Even as a lawyer, even if I advise my clients that before going into the court, before going through the court battles, why don't you see a marriage counselor before using this as a last resort? Or why don't you see a therapist? Maybe you need some counseling, you'll feel better. But they get very offended by such suggestions also. Specifically parents, not from our generation.
Yeah, but it's sad, right? And we hope that we can
Things
make a change.
change.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I hope
And
we
you're
can
doing just
contribute.
that.
And I hope that we can contribute to that change.
Absolutely.
So courtrooms are about facts and justice. What about the unseen toll?
Everything is unseen. All the facts are manipulated because the lawyers have to present them in such a way. So at the end of the trial, nobody knows what is the fact, and you can't distinguish the fact from the false and the true from the fact.
And isn't truth always not your perspective, not mine, but the actual thing that happens? Because, for example, something happens, you see it a particular way, I see it a particular way because of our own conditioning, right? And then the truth. So how do you in that circle of things find the right balance?
See, I try to look at it from an as neutral and as dispassionate perspective as possible. Imagine what had actually happened going by what my client tells. Rule 1 of being a criminal lawyer is never ask the person, "Apne galat kiya ya nahi?" Because then I'm going to be clouded by bias, by my conditioning, by my social value system.
Correct.
So that's something I don't do at all. It helps me look at the case from a purely dispassionate perspective. And then I believe whatever my client says is a fact, is a fact. And that is the only way I can convince the judge, who is a third party, to believe in what I am saying. So it's my job, and don't judge me, but to make even a false look like something that's true. So that's something that I have to do.
Have there ever been times where you thought to yourself, no, my morals are more important and I'm not going to support this?
I think by the time I decided to take up criminal law, I had already crossed that stage and I had fought that fight. Because initially, a lot of people used to tell me, how do you sleep at night? How do you live with yourself? You're doing the wrong thing. But after meeting so many different people in so many various situations where they've been implicated in different cases and for different offenses, I think everyone there's some reason that the person is in that position.
Correct.
And everybody needs a legal representation.
Correct.
Deserves one. That is their right. That is not for me to judge. I do not know and can never know what happened on that unfaithful day. So I don't think that that's ever troubled me, because if I allow that to trouble me, then I'm not going to be able to continue in this profession. But there are two things here. One is that everybody has to draw their own boundaries.
Correct.
So for me, terrorism was something that I knew that
Can't do
anti-India, there's no excuse.
Yeah.
You know, for a murder, or like for a assault case that I just told you, there's an issue, there's a defense. You know, sometimes murders happen in self-defense, or grave, somebody's provoked, instigated. There are various reasons.
Yeah.
Drug peddling, they may not have any intention. There are kids who've been brainwashed, a lot of reasons. But I think anti-country and terrorism is something that was unpardonable for me. So I think I drew my boundary there. Like, that would go against my moral system. And I feel, for me, if I'm true to my client, if I'm true to the court, I'm an officer of the court, and I don't do anything unethical, then I'm not violating any moral code.
You know, I'm absolutely fascinated sitting here because I've never met a criminal lawyer, and this is almost like a celebrity moment for me. Because, like, you know, you watch court shows, and I watch a lot of like justice and court
Okay.
shows a lot. I love watching them. And these detectives are solving these cases, and then there's a lawyer who's representing either the criminal or the victim or the deceased. And then it's crazy. And I'm actually sitting with one discussing this. Is really fascinating to me.
So I just burst your bubble a little bit. It's not as
Fancy.
It's not as fancy or not as exciting how it is, how they show it on TV or in the
Shows.
You know, that our movies, our Bollywood says that the witness walks in and the whole courtroom stands up clapping. If you actually did that, you would go in for contempt of court.
Oh.
So you should actually come to one of our court hearings. Maybe in an interesting case, I'll tell you.
Probably. I will consider that for the future. So tell me, how do long legal battles
Hmm.
affect the mental health of victims and their families?
I think not only are victims affected, accused and their families are equally affected. Because when I'm saying accused, I'm not saying they're convicted. So you're innocent until you're proven guilty.
Correct.
So during the whole court battle, the trial period, when we are calling them an under trial, they are still innocent.
Yeah.
So I feel both the victim and the accused and their respective families face the same amount of mental
trauma.
pressure and trauma. Specifically, I feel for the accused, because a victim, I think the most traumatizing part for a victim is the incident.
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah,
to me.
it happened. And, you know, I prosecuted the felon, and I'm moving on, and they are taking their therapy, and, you know, they are moving on with their life.
And I think the most painful part would have been मेरे साथ क्यों हुआ?
क्यों हुआ, लेकिन हुआ हो गया.
हाँ.
But I think the test for the accused starts when they become an accused, and until they are convicted. In most cases, they are acquitted. Maybe for want of evidence, maybe because there was no case made out, maybe because it was a false case. So I have personally seen the lives of accused and their families topple and get way more affected than those of victims. Okay, for example, I had one person who was working with Citibank, okay, and he was in a relationship, a live-in relationship, and both were, say, 26, 27. They decided to get married. It was a bad relationship, didn't work out, break up, and she went and filed a case against him for rape. Because our laws say that if you consent to a physical relationship, and at that time your consent is based on my promise to marry you, and I don't marry you, that becomes rape.
Oh my God.
So there is so much false implication. Any relationship going sour, getting resulted into rape. The guy lost his job at Citibank. It's been 8 years, and Ashna, he's still unemployed.
My
Because
goodness.
there is a heinous, brutal offense pending against him.
Yeah, of course.
And any corporate will run their due diligence.
And
nobody
will run the
wants
other
to
way.
employ him.
Yeah, nobody will employ her.
And just to give you, you know, the vis-a-vis between why I say that the accused suffers a little more, he's still on trial. The trial has not even started. Okay?
And how long can that
It's
go
been
on?
8 years. It has not even begun. And the victim has moved on, is married, and has children. So her
And that was out of, let's say, spite.
spite, you broke up with me. Let me go ahead and say that it was true. Maybe he never had the intention of marrying her. Maybe he used her. Let me put it like that. Or exploited the situation. She would have felt bad. She would have, you know, made peace with it, moved on. She's still married and has children.
Yeah, and also in that period of 1-2 years when they lived together, she was willingly living there. He wasn't tying her to the chair and,
And
saying, you have to
nobody
live in
knows
this
what
house.
was in his mind or her mind at that point in time. But his life has been stuck, and it's the same. He's in the same position he was 8 years back. It's been on pause. He hasn't got a job. Every time he meets a girl, they give me a call and make me as a lawyer. You know, that's when I think the line between being a lawyer and a
Therapist.
I wouldn't say therapist, but somebody who helps through life battles otherwise. I have to talk to the girl's family, explain to them that nahi
What
madam,
happened?
you know, ये
Which-
प्रूव नहीं हुआ है कुछ भी, अभी ट्रायल बाकी है, लड़की को जब एफआईआर फाइल करना होता है तो प्रूव नहीं करना पड़ता. But unfortunately no one agrees because nobody is going to get their daughter married to someone who's accused of rape.
Oh my God, how traumatizing for that
And
boy.
a lot of people go through this.
Really, it's very common.
I know personally, I know so like around 5 to 6 people between 25 and 30 who are experiencing a situation like this, not being able to get a job. Every time they have to travel, they need to seek permission of the court.
I'm curious to know that although in this case they were not married and this
Right.
happened, but I'm curious to know that let's say somebody was married for 4-5 years,
Okay.
and let's say it wasn't a very happy married life and it was very average or let's say below average, and the woman decides to leave, but before leaving she wants his money. And she says, you know what, I'm leaving anyway and I want that much money. And if he disagrees, she files charges of domestic violence and all of that. He'll be implicated?
Totally. Of course, he'll be implicated because what our law says is that a woman can go, or anybody for that matter, can go to a police station and say that mere saath ye hua, and the police are obligated to take down the case. It is thereafter that she needs to get into proving and he needs to put in his defense. So the stigma has already happened. The damage is already done.
Yeah, the damage is done.
Whether I, as his lawyer, I can prove that it's a false case or there is no case is a matter of time. The damage, she's got her revenge, and the matter is the damage is already done. His life is already impacted.
And
So
that
that's
will
where the
take-
problem is.
And that might take years.
It does. That's what I was telling you, that just for a regular case to begin, you know, the cases that are not media sensitive, that are not expedited or fast tracked, so to say, it takes a minimum of 5 to 8 years for the case to just begin. And thereafter, rest is history, you can only imagine.
So I think then people have to, I don't know, succumb to the fact that they only have to forgive and move on, because 8 years is a long time to live with a particular pain.
And I sometimes feel that that's a better way of uh, finding your peace.
Yeah, because
Just moving on.
yeah, 8 years, if I have to live with a wound, that wound is going to become so big. But if I decide that, you know what, I have to close the wound, stitch it up, put a band-aid, put the medication
And
and get
move
done
on.
with it, is the only way to heal my hand.
So
just to
sometimes
say
that is the advice I give my clients, and they take it otherwise. So you have to try and find a balance where you explain to them that, you know, I understand your position and I know you want to bring them perpetrators to hook and, you know, avenge
Yeah.
for whatever you and your family have gone through.
justice.
But this may be the better way out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something to consider for sure. On the other side, you know, like you said, the accused family may actually suffer more, may actually have more mental implications. The families and the accuser himself, whether guilty or innocent. What is the process of being on trial? How does that person deal with it psychologically?
So there are two schools of people. Some are hardened criminals, or some are the people who made peace with the fact that they've been implicated. And they live their normal life, they remain unaffected, they have the financial appetite to fight, they hire a good lawyer, their retainer is on, and
They don't
they
care.
live their lives. They moved abroad, they never come to trial because they know that nothing is going to happen in court. They abscond. So they are the ones who are least bothered, and I
Yeah.
think it doesn't matter to them, which in turn really troubles the victim's family
Correct.
in those cases.
Yeah.
The other school of thought are the ones who are sincere people, who are probably innocent, if I can make that judgment, and who it really affects them to the point where they lose control over their rationale. Okay, I have seen people really slip into depression. They are on psychiatric medications. They can't perform in their marriage. They can't perform at work. You know, their whole life becomes the court case. So they take it on themselves to fight it, and they're just running pillar to post. Lawyers, they get financially drained.
Correct. I've heard that a lot of people might think of fighting for themselves, but can they really support it?
No,
it's
they
a
can't,
huge-
because they're
Yeah.
not even aware about you know, so many things. So
Correct.
it's a financial drain, and ultimately they come to a point where they just succumb and they accept that defeat. But their entire life becomes that law case and that lawsuit. So I think it takes over your whole life. If you talk to any person who has a court case going on, they will only tell you how that has just changed their life overnight.
You know, although I want to ask you a lot of mental health related questions, but sitting here, I want to know, tell me the most bizarre case you've handled and tell me how it turned out. How did it start? How did it turn out?
Actually, I would love to tell you this. It may not be the most bizarre case factually, because such cases are common. But I'll tell you why it really touched something in me. Because there was this one girl who wrote to me through Baikala jail, and she was actually younger than I was at that time. She may have been in her early 20s.
So she was in jail
And
already.
she was in Baikala jail, and she wrote to me saying that she was from a small town in UP, and she came to Mumbai to live the dream life, okay, that we hear about. And she started working for a very big magazine. I will obviously not take any names. And the owner of that magazine, she was a very pretty girl. So the owner of that magazine started asking for favors, started depriving her of promotion, money for favors. He went to the extent of emotionally blackmailing her, threatening her. And her father has polio, okay, and they are very poor farmers in UP. So he started sending threat messages. He started using her parents to use her as an escort for all his friends, his social circle. And it got to a point where she was ravaged day in and day out, raped, and she just couldn't. And she's written this all to me in her letter. So this is what I have understood in her, broken English, and I have put some kind of emotion to it. But she went on to say that they came to a point where she just couldn't do it, and she took help of her brother, who was also working at a junior post in the same organization, and they took him on a drive and they killed the brother and her. They put an end to him because she just couldn't do it anymore. And at that point I was like, okay, has she done the right thing, has she done the wrong thing? And then she poured her heart out and said that I was being raped every day, so the only way to stop it was this, because he was a very powerful person, well connected. There was threat to my family's life if I didn't succumb to all his demands, sexual demands. So the only way to do it, and she said that I have nothing to lose. I have nothing.
Yeah,
So what am I
correct.
going to lose? And she put an end to him. She was obviously arrested and she was in jail. She didn't have the money. She wanted me to fight pro bono for her. And at that time, I was also just starting out. And I couldn't relate in the sense, but she was a young girl, younger than me. And I said that she's languishing in prison today. She was really suffering in jail also, with no food,
Being tortured there
being
also.
tortured. So I took it up on me and I got her bail. And when
Wow.
I did that, she got released from jail at I think 5:30 a.m. in the morning. And her dad, who was on a polio stick, they both of them right from the jail, they directly came under my office, and they were waiting there since 6 in the morning. I
My
did not know
God.
that, but when I reached office at around 10 a.m., she was standing there and she just hugged me. Okay. And she was stinking because she had been in jail, not had a bath for probably 6 months. And she
My
has
goodness.
cried and wept, and she has said that I can't, I don't know what to say to you. And her father came with money, some nominal amount, and said, I've sold my land and this is for you because you've done something that nobody would have done. So I think that was the that was the case that
Life-changing.
really taught me that there was a reason for her to have done this. But if a third party heard it, it would have sounded just like any other murder.
Correct.
So
She killed for money.
she killed for money. She didn't have, yeah. So for
Yeah.
promotion or whatever.
My
So this is
goodness.
something that really still stays with me, and she's still in touch with me. Her trial has not even started. Again, I'll add that.
And
It's
how
been
many years
about
has this been?
7 years now.
And she.
But she's on bail and she's got a job and she's trying to build herself again. Also, interesting fact, because of you stay incarcerated for so long that when you come out, she didn't know how to speak Hindi or English anymore because she was put into a cell with only Nigerians. So it was all broken language, and she's still finding it difficult to start communicating normally.
Also, then you start to have identity crisis, right? Because then I think there's a part of you that believes I was this innocent girl who was messed with. And then there is a part of you like, I'm a murderer. So, and I was jailed. And then she went through all those circumstances. Then coming back to normal life, you wouldn't know which identity to go with.
Exactly.
And I think it really break a person.
And I think you spend so much of your prime, if you spend your prime years in jail, you've lost contact with, the society that you had built. Peers your age have moved on, gotten married, but you're still living 10 years back in time.
Correct.
Like in the US, when you are released after a considerable period, there are facilities that adopt you. They look after you. They give you grocery, ration. They ensure that you get some vocational job. They train you. You're just let out to probably commit another crime.
My
because that's the
goodness.
only way you know how to survive on the street.
That's crazy. Oh my God.
And there's the year again, there's no counseling that happens post incarceration, post false implication. So you're lost. You have no control over speech, social etiquette, what is right, what is wrong, morals, nothing.
Maybe that's something to look at to, get someone to start an
Build
institution
something.
for
Absolutely.
people who come out, because I didn't even know this, that there is no
There is
facility
nothing
at
like
all.
that here.
That would be amazing
Yeah.
to set up a facility for people who come out and then don't know how to be in life.
How to behave,
Yeah, how to be in
behave
life.
like a non-prisoner.
Yeah,
You know,
correct.
because you're treated like an animal in jail. So you're used to fighting for your food. But imagine replicating that behavior in society.
Yeah, imagine
That
going
will
out
not
the
go
road
well.
to a vada pav stall
Yeah.
and behaving like that vada pav is never going to come to you.
That
And
will never go well.
that's crazy. My goodness, the mental health implications makes your heart wrench, thinking about it. So tell us about divorce cases. I know that criminal law is also, I've learned recently from you and from speaking with other people, that criminal law does come in as well. So when you are dealing with a divorce case, in your observation, what hurts you more, the breakdown of the marriage or the stigma attached to divorce?
I think here also there are two schools of thought. There are a few people who are reluctant to accept that their marriage has broken down. Okay, because they don't know how to live by themselves. They've given, say, 20-25 years to the marriage. They've raised children. They've done all their responsibilities. And they can't admit that my marriage has broken down.
Yeah.
So I think that is one school of people.
Again, I think that would be an identity crisis, right? Because they wouldn't know, if I'm not a mother, I'm not a wife,
Wife,
then who am
what
I?
am I? Because
Yeah.
they often say that I've never been allowed to work. Everything I did was for the family. It's often the woman who takes the back seat, sacrifices her career. So I think those people who go through these things, I think the breakdown of the marriage is something that affects them the most. And then there are the other school of people who stay in the marriage only because of what log kya kahenge, or because of the fact that the parents say ki nibhao or nibhao. So there are two schools of thought.
I know of this lady. I only know of her. I don't really know
Okay.
her. But I know the person who told me this is family to that girl. And she lived through an abusive marriage for 7 years, and means physically beaten day and night.
Okay.
He would drink and beat her or other things. And they would keep her from eating. They would lock her up, the whole family or whatever. And all of this was happening, and she refused to either go back to her parents, file for divorce, ask for separation, or any of this because of the stigma of the society. And she's like, no, where will my parents stand in the society? What will happen to me? My name will be tainted. My family's name will be tainted. She literally lived through it just for that. That log kya kahenge.
But this is, I think, I would say 7 out of 10 cases that people just stick around. And it comes to a point where 10 years later, 15 years later, they can't do it anymore. Because they actually fear that they'll be harmed and they'll be hurt. So they fear their life, and that is when, they've had enough. To a point where then it comes to a point where even if their parents don't accept them or support them, they have to leave and they have to move. And I think I see this specifically in the range where couples, the lady eventually leaves is when the children are settled.
Yeah.
Because until then, they
She's
also
worried.
think that
Who
who
will
will
support?
get married to them, that they'll feel that their mother left and, their mother is a divorcee. So that stigma goes as far as the children and what their in-laws will think in our
Which don't exist.
crazy Indian society.
Yeah, which don't exist, but it's all in imagination that
Absolutely.
tomorrow what will happen 10 years down the line.
So there was this one lady who came to me, just husband and wife living together, kids are settled, moved abroad, and they're living in the same house. He beats her every day. We've got protection orders from court. Police keep coming. Now the police are also tired. So I keep telling her, move. You have, we'll fight for your alimony, maintenance, move out. But there, it's become a habit for her. She's not able to move because she's saying that's the only life I know.
So it's like an enabler.
It probably, but she's saying, what will I go out and do? I don't have the resources, I don't have the means, I don't have the. She's so underconfident because
The bandwidth also goes.
everything that you've ever done is only with the children. So she's 75 today and she continues to live in that abusive marriage.
She's being abused at
At
75?
75.
My
And the
goodness.
husband is 80 and he doesn't stop.
That's nuts.
So that's a case where I just feel so helpless because anything I do and whatever orders the court is going to give are only going to be paper orders.
It's really sad, but it happens across our nation. or maybe other countries, I'm not sure, I can't speak for because I don't live there, but I know across our nation where the identity is based on your husband, his family name, his money, even the children are his, not really yours. Everything feels like a borrowed identity. And you've borrowed all of these, and let's say this lady's 75 and she's been in a marriage for last 50 years. Now, 50 years of borrowed identity, someone asks you to shed it, you won't be able to. So it's nobody's fault, really, even if it's been 10 years.
But I'll tell you, Ashna, another reason why people stick on is because they are used to a certain lifestyle.
That's what I'm saying.
Say in a joint family, okay, in a rich family, wealthy family, you're used to everything, you're living a certain life. Today, if I have to move out, and the children choose to come with me, I'm not going to be able to provide for them like the lifestyle that they have been used to for the last so many years.
Yeah, it's like called fend for themselves.
And
They
the
wouldn't
women
know.
also don't want to be doing that because they are also comfortable and they're okay to stay in an abusive marriage. So I also see those sort of cases. And I don't blame them entirely because if our courts were, were equipped to give you the same lifestyle by ensuring that you lived separately, every person would have walked out of a toxic marriage.
Correct.
But for the client to leave and go to court, it's going to take her 5 years or more just to get a monthly maintenance. So until then, where is she going to be if she's used to an XYZ lifestyle? I think that is another reason why people continue and keep suffering.
My goodness, it just sounds like everyone's suffering, in some way or the other. And because, like you said, the timelines are so long, it makes you think,
They
is it
are
worth
very
it?
long drawn.
Yeah, they're very long drawn and makes you think, is it worth the battle? Is it worth the fight? It'll take me 5 years. By then, I'll be 45. What will I go and do at 45? Will I find
So
a new
many
partner?
people file child custody cases, and by the time the court gives out its decisions, the kids are already majors.
They're not even minors
They
anymore.
are not even minors anymore. When you're talking about long drawn battles that are just become infructuous. So many times appeals are pending, parties pass away, witnesses die, the officers get changed, they get transferred.
Is this because lack of people working in the justice world departments?
Overburden of cases, lack of courts, okay, and just no efficiency in the system, no sensitivity to these cases.
To start a movement, to make a change. Someone has to.
Someone has.
Someone has to, because it's easy to, sit and say this doesn't happen.
But I think somebody who's not a part of the system would be a better person to do it, because I'm also a player in the system.
Correct.
See, let's be honest, and I want to be candid. If I'm representing a person and I want to delay the proceedings, I'm also going to play all the tricks from my act, right? So somebody who's looking at it very dispassionately and I'm putting it out there should definitely do more about it.
Tell me, what does it mean to delay with tactic? I don't know what that means. Explain.
So if I'm representing the husband, right, and it's a case where whatever, for whoever's right, wrong, we are never going to know, because in a marriage,
You
can't
don't know.
pin the blame on anybody.
Yeah, you can't.
A marriage gone bad. So if the wife has made certain claims in the court, as the lawyer of the husband, I'm going to try my best to delay her claims and see that she doesn't get anything. Because I'll tell you another thing, that is not out of spite or that is not out of ill advice. That is out of an advice that if we do this, and it will just get her to the table where you all can eventually resolve everything peacefully and separate, amicably, rather than continuing the battle in court. Like, for example, if you fight in court, it's going to take you 10 years. One of us will win, one of us will lose. The person who loses goes to a higher court, then a higher court after that. Who's gaining? Only the lawyers are making money here.
Correct.
Right? So if I'm going to trouble the lady enough or the husband enough not to get an order and delay the proceedings, because it's so easy to delay in our court system, the other person, one of them is going to get frustrated
And say, let's settle.
Let's settle. And that's the best way to resolve any dispute. Because as a lawyer, I feel the result is most important. I want to free them of all this court hassle, even if that means one less case for me, it's actually more blessing. And people go out there and say that this is a lawyer who puts an end to things, not multiplies things.
Yeah.
For me, that is the biggest achievement.
Also, I think it will help them move on faster in their life.
Specifically when you're at an early age, like many people within the first year or first 2 years of marriage want out. So specific, because they can't adjust. Specifically in those cases, my strong advice is leave.
Get done.
Don't take anything, leave. You have your whole life ahead. You can move on. Don't, because in those cases, the whole pattern of being used to something, or
Has
them to take, none of that has happened.
Correct.
Especially when there are no children involved. There's
Correct.
nothing to hold on to.
Correct.
So in those cases, don't be vengeful, just move on with your life. And I think a man and woman today is looked at equally.
Yeah.
So if you're capable of looking after yourself, do it. Don't,
And it's more important to have a
don't-
happier life ahead instead of
Absolutely.
holding on to that one toxic
because
relationship.
court battles, specifically matrimonial disputes, are a financial, it's a waste of time, money, energy, and most important, emotion. Because you can so often, as a lawyer also, I feel a lot of anxiety through the day because there's so much anxiety being rubbed onto me.
Correct.
There's nobody who talks to me like straight or in a calm or a happy manner. Everyone's only pouring their emotion. And it's not like a therapist who, they're not telling me how they're feeling. They're hyper. They want to fight. They want revenge. It's very negative also. So I also have to constantly try to meditate and keep my sanity and my mental health.
Yeah, obviously, because if you have 20 cases a day, for example, or 20 clients who are coming to you with problems, in the end, everyone's only throwing their problems at you. So you're dealing with that much heavy emotion per day, every
Very
day.
emotionally laden.
Yeah, absolutely. And how draining for you. But I don't think anybody thinks about that. I think people just think lawyers, they don't think, they don't feel. She's getting paid for it.
Yeah, but
That's the attitude. But but the
that's
attitude.
really not.
But I know people's attitude is she's getting paid for it.
See, I won't deny the fact that I am desensitized, maybe more than you are, or he is, or she is. If I read about a rape or a murder, I'm not going to be alarmed.
Yeah, like I would probably, I'm not dealing with that. So yeah.
The only reason is because I'm seeing it, this, like a doctor wouldn't be alarmed with frequent people dying and diseases and tumors.
Correct.
But beyond that, if I'm seeing a child being torn between two parents, it is going to affect me. And I've seen this, Ashna, in one of my custody cases. There was a young boy, 8-year-old. I think one of the most intelligent boys and most happy, cheerful boys I've seen. And it's over the last 4 years, the parents have been fighting for the boy, or I don't know, because of him. I mean, they're using him as a pawn.
I
for
think
his
mostly
own,
it's that.
but it looks like they're both fighting for him. And 4 years later, I don't recognize the boy anymore. Not
Yes.
only has he lost weight, the smile from his face has vanished. He just plasters one, just to show the world. And he's really dealing with the bad grades in school. And, initially he used to greet me nicely. And I was surprised when he was just being abusive towards his own parents and towards me and towards the judge. So just imagine the toxicity that he's facing back at home.
Yeah, because now it's coming on to him. And it happens, right? That's what I'm saying. Our environment shapes us. So I don't think a lot of people think about this when they are approaching divorce or even blaming a partner falsely or truly, I don't know. But saying that he abused me or she abused me or I was raped or whatever. Do they understand what the child is going to go through? Because in the end, they might not process it how you are processing
I
it,
think the
right?
children are the most affected. Most
Yeah, of
severely
course
affected.
they would be because also they're so innocent.
And they are torn between them. They are vulnerable. They are impressionable.
And their love is pure towards each
Their love
parent.
is pure.
They can't see the difference between father being right and mother being wrong.
But
or mother being
also in those situations, what we've seen is that they would want to stay with the person who's providing for them, as in monetarily. When you're in your teenage years, the kids are, they don't see the other parent who's actually suffering.
I actually know of this. When I was much younger, I lived in this place, and there was a neighbor who got divorced, and she remarried. I think within 3 months, and the children didn't even say goodbye to the father because the new father going to be was
Materialistic.
very wealthy. And
Exactly.
I remember being so shocked, and I was like, "How can people suddenly change their fathers
But
emotionally, mentally?"
imagine that what is that child learning? That this is what the child is learning, that this is the right thing to do because this is what he's seeing his parents do. So they also exhibit a lot of violence streak going ahead in future, which also leads to crime, and then it just becomes a cycle. Because again, children from broken homes are more likely to commit crimes and offenses.
Tell me a little bit about that. Why do you say that children from broken homes or unhappy marriages are likely to become criminals or be more violent?
Okay, from whatever little experience I've had and dealing with child custody cases, warring parents, they've seen their parents yell, so they think yelling is the right thing to do. They've seen their parents abuse, beat, assault, so they also are likely to exhibit these same tendencies in their relationship.
Correct, because they think it's
Going
normal.
forward. Okay, they think it's normal. This is one aspect. Second aspect is I think parents are so invested in fighting each other that who's going to give the child the education, the morals, the values? They are neglected.
Correct.
Okay, they go astray. They get into other vices. Also, there's so much brainwashing that happens to the extent of
I've heard that.
saying horrible things about
other person.
the other spouse. So you can only imagine the kind of negativity that is in the child's mind, and let alone knowing what is right from wrong. So there was again another case. It was not a case, but it was a survey that we had done where I visited the Dongri home. So the home in Dongri is for children who are actually accused of a crime, but we don't call them criminals, because they're
Correct.
kids.
Kids.
So we call them children in conflict with law.
Okay.
Okay, in something interesting.
Yeah, very
So,
interesting.
there was one guy who kidnapped a 3-year-old baby, infant. Right, this guy must have been around 11 or 12, and kidnapped her for ransom. Okay, and the child was crying, so they lived in a chawl. So they put a napkin on her face with chloroform
Just to make her quiet.
just to shut her up, so that nobody
hear.
hears. Yeah, but the child, he's a young boy, he doesn't know any better. Excessive chloroform, she died.
Oh my God.
And there was no intention to kill. So when we interviewed him and I was speaking to him, he said that जब भी मेरी माँ चिल्लाती थी, मेरा बाप उसको क्लोरोफॉर्म डालता था.
तो
So
मैंने
this is
सोचा,
something he picked up.
my goodness.
And then I went on to ask him, what about this kidnapping and पैसे? हाँ, मेरा डैडी भी यही धंधा करता है. So that made me wonder what the hell his father does. Meaning, I was not known to him. It was just a one day, survey that we had done to discuss children in conflict with law for some policy. So I didn't go any further. But the two things that were my takeaway here was one, that he used to see his father do that to his mother.
Correct.
He did this. He exhibited the same tendencies, resulting into the death of the 3-year-old kid.
Yeah, he became a murderer.
He became a murderer, and he was in the home for around 3 years. Again, now he's released and gone back to the same parents.
And he would actually end up repeating it. Because he's in that
Absolutely.
environment.
Absolutely.
It's not going to make things different and better. Unless somebody takes charge and says, you know what, let's put you in an institution where you can again be brainwashed to be a better human
No,
being.
even
to be a part of the
idea
society.
of a foster home that is there abroad in so many countries, that if the government feels that your parents are exhibiting criminal tendencies, or the marriage is so abusive, it's not mentally safe for the child to be in such a home.
The government takes you away
Nothing
and then
like
you're
that
given to
happens
another
here.
home.
There's no, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but in India, you go back to the same home of violence around you, and it's most likely that these things are going to be repeated.
So tell me, in the age of social media trials, how does public judgment affect the mental health of victims as well as the accused?
Not only victims and accused, but I think even the judges. Because the judges are also reading the reports, are reading the trolls, are reading the comments, the posts. So I think it affects everybody who's involved in that trial. Okay, you may have heard this before, but I think the biggest problem with the social media trial is that the conviction पहले ही हो जाता है.
Yeah, the result is given.
Public is already decided that he's guilty and he deserves to be hanged. And because again, I don't blame them. They see it from a victim's lens that this was barbaric, but they are not seeing it from the lens of from the law, the parameters of what the law permits, doesn't permit. So I
think it's like how the first picture of the situation is shown.
shown.
So if I show the picture as you entered and there are two ways of showing it. For example, I'm doing a little movie scenario here, but you were found sitting next to my dead body, or you were found in the lift with red hands, blood in your hands, and my dead body was here.
Correct.
So it's that the portrayal can change the narrative. And I think the first narrative that's given on social media will itself give the judgment by that world.
And I think everybody has so many judgments and so many opinions. So biggest example is your Sushant Singh case. Okay, I think that case during COVID took the country by storm. Okay, Ashna, till today we don't know what has happened there. But those trolls and those interviews and those posts, I think must have had a negative impact on I don't know how many people in that whole circle. In the whole, because I was representing a lot of accused who got caught with drugs in that whole racket, and they were like, just a boy next door peddlers. So they were not they were not any
part of
social the Bollywood industry, or they were made scapegoats. So I know personally what negative impact it had on them, because they were also linked to all these big people who got caught because of what the media portrayed.
And they probably were thinking, I have no idea.
They had no idea. They had never probably even known the identity of all
the
these
people. Yeah, because I think a
Mhm.
lot of time these peddlers are just giving it to people
And
and
they
thinking,
they're just taking the money. They
money.
don't know who it's even reaching.
Yeah,
And what the chain is.
yeah.
But I know that because of all the interviews that happened during that time, and they were followed by so much chaos, because a lot of police officers also relied on these media reports. Judges, used to get influenced by these media reports. So there was so much false propaganda. There's no fact checking that was happening.
Yeah, correct.
So I think it does more harm than good. But at the same time, social media, the press, and there has to be that voice freedom of expression. They can't be gagged. That's not what I'm saying. But there has to be some check on what I think. Only a reporting is fine. No opinions should be given. This is
Yeah.
what my personal view is.
Because I think the only way I see it has helped, I'm sure, many cases, is when, for example, a girl was raped and killed, and justice is not taking place. Social media has pushed the
No, that's
justice,
definitely.
yeah, the judicial system to take a stand and punish the accused. Then there's another case I've seen. I'm sure you know the really famous case of that baby who was abducted in Spain. I think it was just because of social media and the media that
Things even come to light. No,
yeah,
that's true.
Otherwise, so many people lose their babies. People are stolen. People
Yeah.
are taken away. Nobody knows. You have the missing
Yeah.
posters for 3-4
So I
years.
think that balance has to be maintained.
Yeah, I think somewhere it can help, but you're right. Sometimes the judgment is given on things where there's no idea or clue what actually happened.
What
in the
actually
case.
happened and who's right, who's wrong.
Yeah, it is imaginary.
Yeah.
It is.
But no, you're absolutely right, because even the laws that we have today, which are good, on paper, they're really the new laws that were implemented passed only last year, the new criminal laws. They all have their font of the origin with the Nirbhaya case. So only because
Yeah.
of how social media fought for
Her.
that girl,
Yeah.
was because of that episode. The fast track courts have really shaped up, and so many anti rape and pro justice laws have been enacted. So I don't think any of that would have been possible as much as it has, had it not been for social media.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think there's pros and cons to
But
both.
you have to strike some balance.
Some balance.
Otherwise, it can do more bad than good.
So tell me, now that I'm speaking to you and I have such a, strong, vibrancy, and you have such a strong personality, what was it like being a female criminal lawyer? Because I'm sure it's not the
It was
norm.
very difficult. I faced a lot of resistance at home initially. Now my parents are proud. I wouldn't say no. But to the extent that my husband used to drive me to the police station and wait outside every time I had to visit the police station for any case. And I eventually got to telling him that this is my job. You can't be driving me around. You won't have time to do your own. So that stopped. But I find it very difficult, because for a murderer, okay, or a hardened criminal to come to a young girl and say, you represent me, is also very difficult.
Correct.
Okay, they'll go to someone they can relate to.
And
Right?
they might feel like the older, the better, the wiser. He might think
or
like that.
admi. No,
Hmm.
a man will be able to represent me better. Ladki kya karegi? Because the kind of people they are not going to trust a girl so easily. Because it is a male-dominated field. Okay, even in the criminal lawyers circle, there are very few female lawyers who have taken up this route. For another reason, because everyone wants their hands to be greased. It's very dirty. So I face a lot of challenges when I have to deal with police officers and to do the dirty work. Dirty work for the right reasons, but
Correct.
it is the dirty work at the end of the day. Dirty work may include just going into a police station makes me feel uncomfortable. Moreover, it's not been easy, because specifically one incident when I was defending a murderer, a person accused of committing murder. It was a gang war, so they had both fired shots. The day before the hearing, the other side, the rival gang, they sent me a picture on WhatsApp of the same gun that was used by my client to kill his family members.
Oh my God.
And the message said, this gun will be used.
On you, most likely. But
Yes,
that's not to scare
obviously,
you.
that was what it was. So in a situation like this, I don't say female. Applies to any criminal lawyer.
Yeah.
But I was really taken aback. I was really scared. This was one incident, and another incident that really played with my mind and really scarred me was I was again representing a lady who claimed that she had been raped by ex-businessman. Again, we don't know how much is true, false. I had to go with whatever her
She has
story
told
was.
you.
I believed her. And the guy was very influential. So throughout the 2 days of the court hearings, there was one particular man following me. And then I probably thought that my mind was playing games with me.
Yeah.
I was hallucinating,
Paranoia.
paranoia. I was overthinking. I was not being rational. But ultimately, when my husband was going home and he, hailed an auto, 2 3 days later, I was nowhere in the picture. The auto wala knew where we lived, and he dropped him home. And my husband was, between calls, and it only dawned on him later. And then he said that आपके बीवी को बोलो इस सब में ना पड़े क्रिमिनल लॉ में, औरत है, ध्यान रखे.
My
And
goodness.
he was terrified, and he was very very scared. And when he got out of the rickshaw, he realized that the rickshaw was a fake rickshaw, and
My
there were
goodness.
3 nameplates to the rickshaw. So he was paranoid, absolutely paranoid, and he told me, I didn't know what to do. This was obviously more like a threat that leave the case.
Yeah, correct.
Don't continue.
Correct.
So I was in a dilemma that whether I should be strong and fight it, or whether my mental health, my family security is more important, and whether I should drop it. But between you and me, I dropped the case because
Wow.
I thought my sanity and
Is more
my
important.
safety is more important. I didn't
Correct.
want my family members to be, at threat or in danger. So I let go eventually, but I must credit the police officers that they took it very seriously, and they found this guy who was driving the rickshaw. And he happened to be a professor in Jogeshwari somewhere. And they beat him, and all of that. So he confessed that the other side had hired him to scare me so that I leave the case. So yeah, I've come across some crazy instances where I've had to, make
don't think
myself
there-
a stronger person and fight it. I can't always succumb.
Yeah.
Because this is what my field is
You're
to
human.
be.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I also have to draw that line.
So forget talking about mental health of accused and accusers. I think mental health of,
Of lawyers, absolutely.
let's do another episode based on that. Let's do one after. We'll do one
Sure.
based on that. So what advice do you give to your clients when the case ends but the scars remain? How do they rebuild their lives?
I think they don't want to see a lawyer once their case is over. So we become more like friends because we've had a relationship.
Correct.
And I just want to be reassuring, and I tell them that the bad part is over. And now look at the beautiful life ahead of you. So that's the limited, thing that I can do, to
Interaction
be very
after.
honest. There's not so much interaction thereafter. But I have a couple of interesting stories where a lot of clients have invited me to their weddings.
Yeah.
I mean, I've represented them in their divorces, and
Now
now I
they're-
attended their wedding.
Because they found happiness again and they give you
So
credit.
in one of the wedding, I raised a toast. My client requested me because he said that the only reason that I'm here is because of her, because had she advised me to keep fighting, I would have wasted the better part of my life. I wouldn't have found my new life partner. So because of her and, the strength that she gave me to fight through this, I am here today on this happy day. So I was like a chief guest, and I had to raise a toast, and I felt really good that I could spread that happiness to so many people on that day.
How
So that
beautiful.
is my post case interaction, if I have to say.
So tell me, lastly, if you could break one pattern in the world and law, society, or human behavior, what would it be and why?
Two things, okay? One is a very emotional side to it, and one is a very practical side to it. One from the mind and one from the heart. So from the heart, I feel be a little kinder. And I tell myself this every day. The world needs nicer people, happier people. And don't think that the other person is being fake because they are being nice. It's come to a point where,
Yeah, correct.
where we feel that probably she wants something.
What does she want?
Because we are so used to people being so brash and so busy and, indifferent or about things. So I think a little kindness could help the world in general, society, human mind, all of that, law. And practically, I feel adaptability is needed. We are at an age where social media, digitalization is taken over, artificial intelligence, but our courts are still into typewriters and stitching, like literal stitching of the documents happens. We don't even use staplers.
Oh,
While the rest of the world is using
Okay.
AI and everything is digital.
digital, yeah.
So I
Files.
think this adaptability has to be legally also, mentally also adapting to the changing times, be it divorce, be it a mindset, and human behavior also. So I think adaptability and kindness, these are my two takeaways.
How
of what
beautiful.
needs to change.
How
Really
beautiful.
desperately, yeah.
No, that's beautiful. That's amazing. I love that answer. I do think being kind will really change everything.
And I think I try to be a little kinder every day, though sometimes I fail given the chaos that I'm trying to thrive in
Yeah.
the whole day. But yeah, that's something I try to do.
Yeah, I think being for me, kindness is my top as well, because you don't know what someone's going through, you don't know what baggage they're carrying, you don't know where they're coming from, and everything they're doing could be just a representation of that. It's not their fault. So I think being kinder and being understanding really, really would go, miles. So I'm going to ask you my closing questions. I do this one with all my guests. Tell me, if you were to introduce yourself to me without mentioning your occupation, your ethnicity, your nationality, your hobbies, or your religion, how would you describe yourself to me?
Okay, I think I'm just a regular girl who's succeeding for the most part to live a very, very happy life in an absolutely chaotic world. Yeah, that's all.
Amazing. Thank you, Gayatri. It has been such an honest and great conversation. I had so much fun. I learned so much about this, and really, it's like TV show to reality, because I've only ever seen criminal shows. I've never met anybody from that world, and it's amazing to see the way how far you've come and the kind of battles you've won. Absolutely commendable. Thank you so much for joining us.
No,
today.
thank you. Really, thanks a lot for having me, and great kudos to the work that you're doing, and trying to build awareness about mental health. And thanks a lot for having me. I loved chatting with you.
Thank you.
It was very refreshing. Hi, I'm Gayatri Gokhale. As a lawyer, I've seen people brought to their knees by heartbreak, conflict, and life changing decisions. But I've also seen incredible strength and growth emerge from all these struggles. So, on the Therapy Diaries, I share these insights to remind you that healing is possible, even in the hardest places.